Hi.
Hello. Hi, Tracy. How are you?
Awesome.
Looking fresh-faced as ever?
I never look fresh-faced this time. Not in the morning. Thank you.
Take a compliment.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bhavna.
How's your week been?
Great, because we went to the movies and it was awesome.
Really good. Very good surprise too. Yes. Movie we went to see was What's Love Got to Do with It? And it's written by Jemima Khan, who we both didn't know basically had the writing skills that she has. And she ended up attending the show. So that was good.
Yeah, that was nice. Here we got the film introduced. It was the world premiere, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was introduced by the director. I'm so terrible, I don't remember his name.
Oh, I can't. No, all my focus was on Jemima. So
yeah, my focus was on Jemima as well. Why? Because we know of her.
Yeah, because we're more familiar with her. She's quite a glamorous figure. She's part of the London aristocracy.
So there you go. And she was obviously. Did she become famous when she married Imran Khan, the cricketer? Yeah. But yeah, I hadn't really heard much about her since. And here she is producing movies. And it was a really good movie. It was so funny.
It was, yeah. And apparently after her divorce from Imran Khan in Pakistan, she moved back to London about 10 years ago. And when she was in London, because of her experience of living in Pakistan for so many years, a lot of her company and all of her friends in London were from the Pakistani Indian culture. And that's what inspired her to write the script for What's Love Got to Do with It?
Yeah. And it is about a British family with Pakistani roots, right?
That's right. Yeah. And the story is about the comparison around assisted marriages versus how the Western culture normally handles marriages, or how marriages come about, and which would be the best, not necessarily the best way, but just in putting them side by side, seeing which ones work and or which ones would be best. Just exploring that whole idea about I suppose it's about exploring that whole idea and raising the question around about if your parents were to organize your partner, who would it be? What kind of person would it be?
Yeah. To me, that's a bit scary, because it's about the perception of who you are, what they think would be good for you. It's all of those things. And to me, it's quite a scary idea, because I feel like it reflects how well they know you. And
also what they want for you.
Yeah.
I think is best for you.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what type of person or who my mum and dad would pick. I know for certain, one thing I am sure of is that the type of person or type of guy my mum would choose would be very different to the type of guy my dad would choose. And so I think there'd probably be rift between them both if I was to agree to an assisted marriage.
Well, yeah, same. My mum and dad aren't together and haven't been together for years. But the same. They would have very different ideas about who would be suitable, who would be a suitable partner for me, for sure.
Who do you think they'd pick? What person do you think they'd pick?
My dad would be like, nice Nigerian man, for sure. For sure. For sure. My dad would be like, nice Nigerian man. And my mother, not so sure about who she would pick. I might ask her. She's coming soon. I'll ask her when I speak to her. So it's like, what kind of man would you pick if you were to pick my partner? I'm going to ask her. I think that's a really good question. A really good conversation, actually.
That's it. In fact, you know what? It'd be great to have your mum on the show.
Oh, she wouldn't.
Because I mean, your mum's been referenced many times on the podcast. So there's an opportunity to get Tracy.
Well, ask her. So go on, ask her now, because I don't think she would.
Hi, is it Ms. Gandu?
Oh gosh, she's never been Miss Gandu.
What do you refer to as?
It's Kay.
Kay. Hi, Kay. This is an official invitation for you to come on board Tracy's podcast as a special guest. I'm sure all our listeners would love to hear you share some of your stories.
Oh, all right. Tell us just to listen to this one now. And yes, the week's been great. That was really good. That was a highlight, honestly. That was a highlight for me this week.
It was a world premiere, and we also got the opening speech from the writer and the director, and it was all on the backdrop of the iconic Sydney Opera House. So you can't get much better than that. Definitely a highlight of the week.
Exactly, definitely. And then I caught up with friends for birthday dinners and chats and things, and that's nice. And just and Frida, that was really good as well.
Oh, of course, that's right. You have a Frida Kahlo interactive exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely worth visiting.
Yeah,
platforms, artistic platforms that the organisers put together to celebrate the life of freedom. An immersive experience.
It's a very immersive experience, and she's an icon, international icon. And I think it was maybe watching the movie, because I've been to the Blue House where she grew up, where she lived, and then I watched the movie to really understand how inspirational and forward thinking she was, especially in her time. You know, she was like a world-renowned artist, feminist, communist, all of those things. Just such an incredible woman, and also a woman that's lived in suffering.
That's it. That's what really came through for me in the exhibition, was how she combated so much pain, the physical pain also, you know.
Physical and emotional.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Physical, emotional pain, and at the same time, because you think they were like exclusive, mutually exclusive, her zest for life. Yeah.
And the interpretation, knowing that, and then the interpretation of her artwork.
Yes, because it's
symbolism.
Because that really gives depth to her art when you know the story.
Yeah, it kind of brings it full circle.
Yeah.
So, and I really enjoyed the VR experience, which was, again, one of the platforms that the organisers arranged. And it took you on this immersive journey from her perspective. It was amazing.
It was incredible. Yeah. Really good. So I highly recommend that. It's really good. All right. And because, you know, we're in January, every January, start of the new year, we have an announcement of the Australian of the Year. So that's the story I'm going to go with today, because generally speaking, the Australian of the Year is someone that's inspirational, leader, and is doing great work, right? That's the whole point.
And who decides the Australian of the Year? Is it like a public vote?
I think it's like the Attorney General, but you're right. I don't know how the voting goes. Maybe I can look
There's a short list, I think, isn't there?
But who decides?
I think it might even be community members who vote, and they put forward suggestions.
Yeah, because there's usually one from each state, right? It's kind of like a whole year thing. Then to get nominated, and then you get states, and you know, so you get the local ones, and then you get the deciding on Australian of the Year. But anyway, this is the story about the winner, or the award, who was awarded. It's not really a competition. So it's from the ABC News, and the title is Body Image Campaigner Taryn Brumfitt, who directed Embrace. That's her documentary, named 2023 Australian of the Year.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. And Taryn Brumfitt wants women and children to appreciate and understand their bodies. And that's like her vision or a mission. And she's from Adelaide, and she struggled to accept her body, and she's inspired millions of people worldwide. Therefore, she's the 2023 Australian of the Year. And she was awarded that prestigious award by the Prime Minister in a ceremony this week.
I see.
And there was others. There was Professor Tom Calmer, who spent decades improving the lives of Indigenous people. He was named the Senior Australian of the Year. Senior Australian of the Year.
They have categories, different categories. Okay.
Oh, yeah, because... sorry. So Taryn is Australian of the Year. Socceroo star Amar who works to improve the other refugees' lives, was named the Young Australian of the Year. Professor Tom Carmer, who spent decades improving the lives of Indigenous people, was named the Senior Australian of the Year. And Amar Singh, a Western Sydney Sikh who feeds the needy and champions tolerance, was named Australia's local hero.
Oh, okay. So I'm liking these categories, and what I'm liking even more about the winners of each category, they all come from obviously diverse backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, which is really great to see.
It's really great to see this more diverse nominees.
Especially when being the spearheads of these great initiatives within communities. Which is
exactly.
Great.
It's
beautiful.
Great
that they're being celebrated.
Yes.
And being given the accolade that they obviously deserve.
Exactly.
That's great to hear.
And Brumfitt, that's her surname, Taryn's surname.
Oh, I see. Taryn Brumfitt. Okay.
Yeah, Taryn Brumfitt is a director whose 2016 documentary Embrace explored how she learned to love her body and why so many women are unsatisfied with how they look. And it's been shown in 190 countries and is streamed on Netflix. I'm gonna watch that.
When you mentioned the documentary Embrace, I remember seeing that on my Netflix.
Dear.
Yes, Embrace. And yeah, I do remember seeing that. So maybe I'm going to go back and visit that actually.
Yeah. Me too. So she's got books out as well. And then she's got like 4 books out. And the latest one's called Embrace Kids, which is really good. Kids, I think that's where we need to start, right? With the kids. Sold to millions worldwide, her books. That public life had a sudden beginning in 2013 when she posted a simple before-after photo on Facebook showing how her body had changed. The photo, an expression of self-acceptance, went viral. And she looks beautiful in both photos. So that in the story, there's a before and after picture. I'll try and describe them. So her before picture is her wearing a bikini, standing, posing, like in a competition. It could be, I don't know what competition it was. It could be Miss Universe or that kind of, bikini sharp pose. And she's wearing a number. So she's in some sort of competition. And then the second picture is her excess skin and, more regular body, more regular, common body.
Yeah.
Not front part of the side. Lumps and bumps, basically. Showing all the lumps and bumps. Very beautiful.
And was the first picture, was it airbrushed in any way? Was it kind of...
I don't think so, but who knows? I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
Maybe there was a time in Taryn's life when she put a lot of attention on the way her body looked.
But do you know what I'm going to say? Because I've just zoomed in on the pictures, right? It could be just my eyes, but actually what I've noticed, which is quite interesting, her before picture where it's like body beautiful, perfect, toned, flat stomach, slender legs, that kind of before picture, wearing a bikini. She does actually have stretch marks on her belly that indicate previous pregnancy, which you can't really see unless you zoom in. I noticed that. So that's quite interesting. So maybe that was part of the start of a journey. And then one of her comments is, we weren't born into the world hating our bodies, which is true. This is something the world has taught us. And she says, body shaming is a universal problem. We have been bullied and shamed into thinking our bodies are the problem. She says, what if instead of spending precious time and energy at war with their bodies, our young people were free to become the leaders, big thinkers, and game changers the world needs more of right now? So that's basically what she says. And she does highlight, which I think is important, that she said promoting a healthy body image was not about encouraging obesity. It's about the way that we feel about all of ourselves, our skin color, our height, our age, our gender, our unique selves. And it's learning to move, nourish, respect, and enjoy our bodies. Because you can't look after something you don't love. And I just actually find that quite touching when I think about it. A lot of us can relate to having an issue with body image at some point in our lives. I know I certainly can. I mean, what about you?
Yeah, I'm hearing Taryn's words and how she's saying about being able to feel comfortable in your own skin, your own body. There is pressure in the external world. That's the world that we live in, and the pressure to look a certain way when bodies are celebrated, when there is flat stomachs or thin thighs, and that's what's celebrated. People say, oh, you look great, or you're looking really well. That's the image that's kind of portrayed out there. So yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any personal experiences of not embracing your body?
I feel like I'm comfortable in my skin. I feel like I'm comfortable in my body, but I'm also not confident enough to wear a bikini a lot of the times. So I suppose I'm in that middle ground. I don't have that many experiences.
That's okay. So have you always felt the same about your body?
Yeah, I would say I've always felt comfortable within my own skin. I'm not sure if anyone's ever happy with their own body. There's always whether or not you don't like the size of your nose, or you don't like the way your toes look, or you've got a flabby belly, or you've got slightly thicker thighs, or you've got bingo wings. So and I think we can also be very overcritical about ourselves. So
but what about you? Because that's what we can be, but how do you feel? Are you saying that you're just in the middle, or?
I would say I'm comfortable with my own body, but however, I think I can be overcritical about myself. So parts of my body I'm not great about. I'd love to change parts of my body, but that's like everybody would like to change parts of their body. I personally don't feel pressure to conform, and I think I look after my body because I would like a healthy body. I don't go to the gym. I don't do my workouts. I don't have to go on any special diets because of an external pressure. It's how I feel about myself and how I want to feel comfortable within myself, because that's what Taryn's talking about. Taryn's talking about being able to feel comfortable within yourself. And so how I feel comfortable within my body is by going to a gym. That's what makes me feel comfortable within my body. If I didn't go to a gym, I wouldn't feel comfortable in my body.
Well, that's I guess that's the point, though, isn't it? Really, I'm just thinking, like, my perception of my body has changed dramatically, actually, if I think about it, from being very young to where I am today. Like, obviously I wasn't born hating my body, but I did hate my skin color and my hair very, very, very young age. And why? Do you know what I mean? So why did I feel that way? And I guess it's the world. I'll just generalize. It's the world and the messages I was getting about what that meant in terms of the opportunities you could have, the relationships you could have, the life you could have, actually. So I guess that's why. And then also those differences that are, if they're different, and it depends on the community you grow up in. I was the only kind of colour in my primary school. So those differences stood out, like you would say. And then, I guess that's why. And then, kids not very nice, bullying, but then even some adults aren't very nice either. So I guess that's why. And then it's taken me quite a long time. I mean, I think I've said before, I'd straighten my hair to look more European, to fit in more, to feel more attractive. And it was only in my 30s, which I'm kind of embarrassed to admit. It's only in my 30s and late 30s at that I don't know what changed. Reflection work. I've been doing a lot of work on myself since my 30s. But something changed where I finally just accepted and appreciated it, because there's a difference between acceptance, this is just the way it is, and there's a difference between accepting and appreciating it's absolutely beautiful. I should be really proud of this. This is me. This is who I am. There's a complete difference. And it's getting to that point, and it took me a long time to get to that point. And that's why it's so important, I think, for people like Taryn to highlight these things, because and the other part of it is not wanting to change a thing, because why do you want to change it? Do you know what I mean? What is the idea that it needs to change in the first place?
Yeah, this is again about how you said about acceptance. So yeah, you know how you were saying about you don't know what necessarily happened, and you mentioned about being in your 30s. I think the landscape has changed over the last decades. And so whilst you're in your 20s, which is a number of decades ago, compared to when you're in your 30s, you know, that's also maybe a factor in play. You know, when as we were growing up, there wasn't this idea to embrace who you are. And it's only very recently that's come about, you know, embracing the person you are, loving who you are. That whole concept has really been highlighted over over the last years. And so, you know, maybe that was the time when you kind of took a slant and looked at things a little bit differently.
I don't think it was external, honestly, because here where we live, still not a lot of people that look like me. I mean, there is certainly more. I've totally seen the massive change from when I first moved here. Here in the UK, yes. Here, not so much. So my external environment wasn't different, really. In fact, it went the other way, because there was far more people who look like me in the UK than there ever has been here where I live now. So I don't think it was that, just for me. But you made me think of something and I forgot. It's just left my head.
It's interesting how you asked about how do I feel, and I know about my body, and I know I've always felt comfortable with my skin color. I've never wanted to change my skin color.
It's good.
I can't think of a time when I wanted to change my skin color. I love my skin and I love the color of it. I remember when I was very, very, very young, I went through a phase, and I'm so glad it was a phase. It was a very short phase where, and I must have been about 6 or 7. And I would say that I wanted blue eyes and blonde hair.
I can't imagine you with blonde hair.
but I never wanted a different skin color. It was simply the features, the blue eyes and a blonde hair. And ironically enough, when I was in my 30s, you mentioned about being 30s. In my 30s, I've always worn contact lenses, and I ended up going through another phase. I'm putting it down to a phase. I had a phase where I wore blue contact lenses. And looking back now on those photos, Tracy, I looked like an alien. I really did. Because again, it's like the skin color obviously stayed the same. It's my beautiful beige brown color. And but then this set against these piercing blue eyes, it just looked like I was from a different planet.
Oh, really?
So I don't know what was going through my head. I don't know what narrative I was telling myself at that time. But I was obviously, I don't know if it was a fashion thing.
Yes. I don't know. When was it? In the 90s?
It was I'm ashamed to say, it was probably about 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Right. So like, yeah.
In the early 2000.
Okay. Because I did the same phase. It wasn't because I didn't like my eyes. It was just I loved the be able to change the look so dramatically. So I'd like have green eyes, blue eyes, hazel eyes, I just rotate through these different eye colors. Do you remember? Because they were selling them everywhere, these colored contact lenses.
Mine were prescription blue lenses.
Oh, I didn't have
So,
prescription.
I would be wearing, this wasn't for partying. This was my attire. This was my look.
Okay.
A number of, I think it went for about 2 years, 3 years.
Oh, wow. Like permanent.
And I actually remember when I let go of the blue contact lenses, I remember quite specifically, it was about embracing my beautiful brown eyes. So I obviously was going through some kind of phase. Maybe it was my confidence levels. And maybe that's what body shaming is all around, is around the confidence factor. If you're not confident your own body, then you're going to be reaching out and trying to replace it, trying to change it, trying to alter it to fit in with what you think would make you comfortable. And maybe that's what explains my blue contact lens era, is that I was going through a time when I wasn't so confident and I wanted to be accepted. And I remember it was a time when I was actually trying to fit into the Australian landscape.
Oh, okay.
I'd arrived into Australia and wanted to fit in. And maybe that's subconsciously, that's what was going on. And so I remember, because I know that when I finally let go of the contact lenses, I finally threw them in the bin, which is where they belong. And I remember feeling quite confident about myself and owning the color of my eyes and how beautiful the depth of the brown was. And so for me, it was definitely a confidence thing. So.
Yeah, well, it just, obviously it's linked. I mean, definitely how you feel about your body and your confidence is linked, for sure. It makes sense, doesn't it? I was just thinking about other instance of body where I was not happy with my body. Getting called by boys that, like, you've got thunder thighs. That was a name I got called. So I've always had a lot of muscle, just because that's my body type's kind of sporty. I would describe my body type. And I do remember that really hurting at high school. But it's like, and it's like interesting though, how do they know that that's going to hurt your feelings, or it's a trigger, basically? No, it's an insult, obviously. It wasn't meant as a compliment. So
I'm not even sure where that term even originated from. And I know that it's still happening even now, because I know recently, even on social media, there's girls as young as 7 and 8 looking at themselves in pictures and commenting around, oh, my thighs are looking big. So there's this focus on the thighs. I'm not sure where that's come from.
But isn't it interesting how, for bodies, as far as bodies go, there's this focus on wanting things bigger and focus on wanting things smaller. And it's just like, and what? Isn't it interesting though, when you think about the things, like,
we're never happy. We're forever critical, overcritical of ourselves.
wow.
So I'm sure if you ask Cindy Crawford, I'm sure Cindy Crawford would point out a fault that in her own body, part of herself that she's not comfortable with. And outside looking in, we'd all think, okay, well, that's the epitome of.
I don't know. Does it help? Maybe it helps some people to have that realization, but I don't. Doesn't really. The thing is, it just takes so much energy. Like, you could be spending your energy on other things. It takes so much energy to have those thoughts or occupy your mind. And I'm really just grateful for how I feel about my body now. I'm pretty good with it. But it's just all this time and energy I wasted.
Yeah.
Feeling anything.
Maybe that's something, maybe that's a learning that comes as you get older, as you experience more. And then you learn to appreciate and realize that has been wasted energy. And as you become older, you become more confident.
Do you think?
That you have. Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe for some people that's probably true. But it's interesting to see so many women go through surgeries and cosmetic procedures to change their body.
Yeah, I've found that as a lot of women get older, the emphasis turns away from the body beautiful, and then it turns to becoming more youthful. And that's where the surgeries come into play. And
yeah, but the useful is related to beauty.
Yes, yeah.
So it's about staying beautiful because staying youthful because that's the perception of what beauty is.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. And it's easy for me to say because I feel I look good. I look younger than I am. So far, so good. I did one of those filter things where you change your face, age you.
Oh, I've never come across that one before.
Right. Next time we see each other, okay. I'll do you.
Yes, please.
And I looked at my potentially 80-year-old self. I'm like, yeah, I could do that.
I'm loving that because I'm going to be well, I've always said I'm going to be 50 and fabulous, and now I'm knocking on 50's door. So, but I'm still feeling fabulous.
Good. You are. You still look fabulous.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I think definitely with age, with age comes wisdom, one would hope. And so you wise up and you think, okay, well, yeah, it's, you don't worry necessarily, what you look like to the outside world. It's about how the focus is more so about how you feel within yourself, and also, what contribution you're making and what kind of purpose there is to your existence. So it's less about the aesthetics and more so about the internal.
For some people, absolutely. Like, I'm thinking, what would I tell myself if I could go back to that time where I didn't, where I hated my body, basically. Didn't like it very much. Didn't like very much about it. Like, what could I have said to myself then that would have changed how I felt? And I struggle to know what we did say to me then. Other than, do you know what? I'm just thinking, really, just for me, because this is just how I feel like I would think. I would have to see lots of examples where the beauty is celebrated, where they looked similar, had similar features to myself. I think that's what I would have needed to be able to believe it and feel it at that age. So I think that's a massive thing. Anyway, I digress. So yes, Taryn Brumfitt, Australian of the Year. And actually the article goes on to talk about other Australians of the Year and their stories, which, I know Socceroo Awamavel is becoming a really powerful role model because he fled the civil war in Sudan and now he's one of Australia's top. He's 27 years old. So that's beautiful. That's amazing. But actually he plays for a Czech team now, Sparta Prague, because he's in Europe. And he has a not-for-profit barefoot boots, which he co-founded. A charity aims to improve health, education and gender equality among refugees, which is absolutely beautiful. And then
the other Australian.
Wait, one more before yours. Is the Indigenous campaigner Senior Australian of the Year, Professor Tom Karma. He's a university chancellor. I spent decades improving the lives of Indigenous people. He's 69, Kungarakan elder, born in Darwin. 45 years as a champion. But yeah, that's pretty incredible. So some very, very worthy awards there. He referred to the upcoming referendum on The Voice, saying an enduring partnership with Indigenous communities that allowed them to advise on the decisions that affected their lives was vital. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the other Australian of the Year is a local hero. And the news article that we're sharing today is from the Canberra Times. So not sure if you're familiar with the Canberra Times, Tracy.
No,
but it's probably like you said, as we don't live there. So the Canberra Times this week, the headline was Australian of the Year Local Hero 2023. Amar Singh turns hate to good. Local Hero Australian of the Year for 2023, Amar Singh wants every kid to be proud of their food, their language, their culture, and their appearance. He runs Turbans for Australia, an organisation which is a force for good that came out of bad. We go where our people are hurting, he said. Mr. Singh said migrants come to Australia because it was a beautiful country and encouraged them to share their cultures. It's our duty as migrants from ethnic backgrounds to make sure everyone that calls Australia home, to make sure they can learn about our culture and our values, he said. We're all equal. We all come from different lands, from a wonderful First Nation people to our newest migrants. We're all equal. And he goes on to say, turbans are part of the essential identity of followers of a Sikh faith, but they also attract racist abuse, as Amar Singh found his cost in 2014. He was so outraged at the slurs that he phoned into a radio station and told the story. Amazingly, the abuser heard the broadcast and phoned in to apologize. When does that happen? Where you get the opportunity to basically hear from your abuser and get an apology. So,
Never.
And it's not what he even called in for.
No.
So he must have resonated. Whatever he said, whatever Amar Singh said in that radio show, whatever he shared, it must have been so powerful enough, and he must have resonated to the point where his abuser also called in to then apologize. So incredible. The outrage didn't leave Mr. Singh, so he decided to do something about it rather than just allowing himself to see inside. The abuse galvanized him to form Turbans for Australia with the aim of altering perceptions. People in turbans, or Sikhs, should be seen doing good for people of all faith, was the thought. Every week, its volunteers package and distribute around 450 food and grocery hampers to hungry people in Western Sydney. And they don't just distribute food to the needy. According to the group, a quarter of the people who drowned in Australia in the decade to 2018 were born overseas. Australia's migrant and ethnic communities desperately need education about water safety to prevent any more tragic deaths, Turbans for Australia said. So they launched a migrant water safety and awareness campaign, primarily for Australia's culturally diverse communities. So that's amazing. That's an amazing organisation that Amar Singh has set up. So I can understand why he's been named the local hero. And it's great to see Amar Singh also bring attention to him wearing a turban. And we talked previously about embracing body image, embracing what you look like. And for Amar Singh, this is about embracing his identity as a Sikh. The turban is the sign of your Sikh heritage, your Sikh faith. That's right. And it's great that he's embracing it. I know, again, back in England, as we mentioned, there's a lot more diversity that you can see, and there's a lot more people that you come across wearing turbans. Whereas over here in Sydney, I don't know about anyone else's experience, but where I live, it's the eastern suburbs of Sydney. You don't often come across people of Sikh faith. You don't come across people wearing turbans. So it's always great. It's always great to see Sikhs in my area, to see people wearing turbans. Sometimes they're referred often to turbanators, which was previously a very derogative term. But now I think what's happened over the years is that people of the Sikh faith have actually embraced it, the word turbanator, and they identify themselves, sometimes some people, as turbanators. So it's great to see turbanators here in Sydney.
I've never heard that term before.
No.
And to me, because I've never heard it used in a derogatory way, because I've never really heard it. So to me, the first thing that comes to mind is like power and strength, because I'm thinking Terminator's like, whoa, that's kind of the idea I get with that. Quite a funny reference.
Yes. Yeah, because it is something to be very proud of, and because the word is, I suppose, it's come from obviously Terminator. It's got that strength, it's got that power, it's got that ownership around it, and so I think that's also the reason why a lot of Sikhs have also embraced that word too, Terminator.
That's so cool. I actually did get in a taxi the other week with a Sikh because I was wearing a turban. Oh, I'm so annoyed with myself because my memory is, isn't the best at times. But I remember I was asking him a question, like, what's up with the colour? It was a beautiful colour. That was it. It's like a beautiful purpley blue colour. So I was asking him about the colour and what it meant, and like those different colours, and he was telling me the different colours, and I'd forgotten. like the explanations about
Also,
the different colours.
each of the colours symbolise a trait of a faith.
He was using specific words. They might have been Sanskrit words or something for the different colours. I wish I could have taught more. I would probably remember to get a deeper understanding. I'm so annoyed with myself. But I just think, gosh, wouldn't the world be boring if we all just looked the same?
I know.
Oh.
Yeah. The reputation of the turban has also changed throughout the decades. I know when I was a lot younger, I went to a very diverse populated school, and there was lots of children of Sikh communities, and they had top knots. And then by the time I got to secondary school, those kids who had the top knots, they'd either then cut their hair to fit in to the secondary school, or they would go on to wear turbans as teenagers, the boys, and then once they left school, and I saw them again, sometimes I didn't recognize them because they'd actually had their haircut, and so it was about fitting in. It was about being accepted. But now, and then as time evolved, you got to see turbans on the catwalks. You got to see, even with
turban on the catwalk.
There's turbans in the catwalks. There was even there was a series of actually a film, Sex and the City, where one of the main characters, Samantha, she wore a turban throughout one of the main kind of episodes. And so it's they're plastered now across fashion magazines, and I think there definitely has been a change, a tidal change of the reputation of the turban. And so now it's also, again, because we're now embracing who we are, we're embracing other cultures. And now there's somebody who's of a Sikh faith who has a top knot, and then it basically progresses onto a turban. It's probably a lot easier now compared to many decades ago, where people like Amar Singh, they were being abused. There were racial slurs around the turban. That was probably quite common in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, whereas compared to now, because we're embracing ourselves, more focus on being comfortable about who you are and embracing different faiths and cultures, there is that particular perception of a turban is changing slowly, but there is change happening.
I don't know. I still think it stems from not understanding and not knowing. People seem to be afraid or make fun of the things they don't know or understand. And that he was talking about something that happened 10 years ago, not 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point. I suppose I don't often see many people with turbans now, but I think that's probably because of where I live.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even think, because there wasn't any Sikhs at my high school that I'm aware of. Actually, nobody wearing turbans or having top knots, so I didn't realize that was like an evolution. And just to think, the fashion, this is what's interesting. Fashion has come from, like you were talking about the turbans, but it became part of high fashion, and women wore turbans, where really it's a man that wears the turban if it's about the religion. And the top knots thing, that was so fashionable in the last, I don't know, X amount of years. I had not even considered the linkage to Sikhism.
Yes, and I think also maybe it's because I'm not of a Sikh faith, I think maybe there's the identity of the turban being of a Sikh faith and of a Sikh culture. And I think what's happened over the years is that you don't necessarily, even if you follow a faith, you don't need to look that part. And so that's why there hasn't been, like when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, it was very much around about you look like the faith that you follow. And whereas nowadays, now I'm in my 40s going on 50s, it's a case of you can be of a faith, but you don't need to look like you're from a particular faith. And so with Sikhism, and with an identity of being a Sikh with a turban, that's another reason why there may not necessarily be that many turbans or turbanates that you now see. And when you look different, it's unfortunate, but you can be opening up yourself or an invitation for abuse. Not that that's correct in any way. And so because we don't often see a man with a turban on the street.
Yeah. And I guess it's because of how I grew up and my background. When I see something different, what that creates in me is curiosity. And I want to ask questions, right? I'm fascinated. I want to know more. But when other people see something different, they want to attack.
That's fear.
I know it's fear, but it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting that the different reactions to difference. I guess it's fear that's going to change your way of life or harm your way of life in some way. But let's not get into that because we could be here for like hours. That's another podcast. Yeah. All right. I've got a what would you do?
Okay, yes, that's right. Yes.
And I've got to do my little made-up jingle that changes every week. What would you do? You ready?
Yes, go for it.
All right. So this is a work context.
Okay.
A co-worker confides in you. I honestly just find it easier to work with men. I honestly just find it easier to work with men.
You see that kind of comment, maybe it's geared towards the specific industry that you may be working in, or it could be geared to a specific environment that person is experiencing with that comment. If it's said in general anyway, I always prefer working with men, or I always prefer working with women. You know, that's a different context. If someone said to me, oh, I prefer working with men, or I prefer working with women, that's to me saying that they've obviously had an experience within that company, within that environment. And so that's what, there's always a story, there's always a reason, there's a reason behind that. So whether or not it's valid or not, I'm not too sure. And that's going about having a curious mind. I'll be asking around, why would that be?
All right. Okay.
Because that particular comment could be due to a specific incident that's happened within that environment, within that company, maybe within even that industry. So because you can get departments where there are women who are notoriously cutthroat, and when in a professional environment, it's that cutthroat attitude, and if all the women are like that, then, or if everyone's like that, then I suppose it comes down to the context.
Yeah, everything does. You're right. Absolutely. Well, for this, I guess the point is, and this is what it says, why it matters. Your colleague's preference for working with men could lead them, consciously or unconsciously, to overlook talented women. Because, all right, this co-worker says, find it easy to work with men. That potentially means, and depends on their position and their influence in that workplace, that they're putting together teams, or they're choosing to work with people, choosing not to work with other people, because if you've got a preference for one, you're generally excluding the other, if you can. So when this happens, women can miss career opportunities, and your co-worker can miss the chance to work with women from whom they might learn something. I never feel like, oh no, that's not true. I was going to say, I never feel like qualities I'm not liking in someone in a workplace is because of the gender. I was going to say that, but then I think about it, that's not true. Sometimes I feel like women are forcing certain behaviors to feel like more accepted, that they think is how they need to behave. I feel like that about some women. But anyway, another podcast.
In that context, though, because if a woman says, oh, I prefer working with men, there's obviously, there is likely to be an experience that has been had whereby there's been a number of women who have obviously not supported this woman, which is why she's led to say, or to share the comment, I prefer working with men. I've been in a situation in the advertising industry where I've worked in a department which consisted of 9 women, including myself, and there was 1 male in the team.
Mm.
And I remember when the male was hired to be in the team, it was previously a group of 9 women in this one department. And when the hire was made and it was a male, and it was announced that it was a male, there was a lot of hype, there was a lot of excitement within the group. And the group also consisted of fairly younger women.
Mm.
They were very excited about having this male on board. And I remember I never felt like I fitted in within that group. I'm not sure why, but it was an all-women group, and I was overlooked for opportunities by women in that group. My comments in a boardroom were always criticised. My ideas were not taken seriously in a group of 9 women. And I remember when the male hire came on board, the male, I found that in the boardroom, when I put forward my ideas, it was the male hire who backed me with my ideas. And it was only when he backed me in the idea in the boardroom was that it got the attention of the other women who I'd been working with for months. What happened in that situation was I could have had an experience whereby I would say, oh, I don't like working with women, but I didn't. I came away from that, and I was reflected on myself about what I could have done better in that situation, or how I could have reacted better in that situation. It was only until a few years passed, I'd already left that company, and I bumped into the male hire who had also left. It was only when he had left and he shared with me, and he said to me, he said, I saw how the other women in the department, in the team, belittled your value, your comments, the contribution you made, and that's simply unacceptable. And so there are experiences where in the workplace where you have women and they band together, and there may be another woman in a group and there's discrimination against another women. There are lots of situations, I'm sure, that happen in the workplace where women do not stick up for each other.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I don't think it's specific to gender, though. I see men do that as well. So I totally agree, women do that. I just don't think it's gender specific. I think it's, for whatever reason, women can be just as bad, basically. But this is what it's saying. It says your colleague's preference, because you're right as well. You're right. It's context dependent. Who knows what's happened in the past and where this idea has come from. But the point that they want to make here is that comment might signal that your coworker thinks women are less talented or less likable than men. Yeah. You can ask, what makes you say that? Because really they're generalizing. They're picking a whole 50% of, people in the world. They're not saying, I find it easy to work with another person other than this person. They're saying men. I find it easy to work with men, so I don't find it easy to work with women. So that's a big number of people to exclude.
I suppose it depends on what kind of experience she's had with the men that she's been working with and the women that she's been working with.
We don't know. We don't know if it's a she co-worker or a he co-worker. And we don't know if it's based on experience or perception. This is the point. We don't know because we don't know the context. This is one context. Well, what you said, brilliant. The first time you said you get curious, you ask questions. So you can ask, what makes you say that? And then when people are asked to explain themselves, it leads them to rethink the position. So if it was the context that they believe that men have some sort of superior qualities and they're better to work with for that reason, if that was the context, then they'll realize that if it was unconscious from the questions, yeah? But it might not be. There might be other experiences, you're right. So
would you, if that was the case, so let's say if somebody said to you, I prefer working with men than women, would you call them out on that? Would you say, oh, do you realize what you've just said? Would you actually call them out?
No, because I don't know the reason they said that yet. I would ask a question. What makes you say that?
And
so it depends.
Once they answered that, would you then, or if they said, for example, I say that because women can be like this, and men are much more easier to work with because you can do A, B, and C. Women are X, Y, Z. Would you call it out with them if it was a co-worker? Would you say,
yeah, but I wouldn't like be attacking them or anything. I'd probably say, well, I think it's unfortunate that's your experience. I've had lots of experience of the opposite. I've had really worked with fantastic guys, really cluey and really inclusive, and the same for women. And then I've had the other experience. So I think you need to be open-minded and just see who the person is you're dealing with at the end of the day. That's how I feel about it. If you're lucky enough to have had those experiences to share. But again, even if you haven't, the fact is everyone's different and you're still closing yourself off just to think that way. It's limiting you.
Yeah, there you go. And that's exactly what would probably be the solution there.
Well, this is what it says. So it can, just asking a question, a curious question, can lead people to rethink their position. And then you can explain why it happens. It can be, and if you're talking specifically about bias, it can be eye-opening to understand how bias works or share your own perspective. I've had great experiences working with women. This is like a comment. Even if you can't convince them to think differently, you can push back on their point of view. And it says why it can happen is your colleague may say this because of performance bias, which can lead them to incorrectly assume that men are more competent than women. Likability bias is another thing talked about before, can lead them to feel that competent women are less likable and therefore harder to work with. And if your colleague is a man, this comment may be rooted in the affinity bias, he may prefer to work with people like himself. So there's different kind of biases potentially at play there. And that's the point. Don't know until you dig deeper.
That's it. That's like with any situation. Yeah.
So that was what would you do? Thanks for that, Bav. I worked in a workplace that was predominantly women. I wish there was more men in there. Men definitely have something different to bring to the table, and so do women. So it would have been nice to just like perspective.
It is, like you say, it's all about context, because it's also about what type of working style do you have. So just to put your blinkers on and say I prefer just working with this sector is not only closing yourself off, but it's also it means that you're not necessarily varied in your working style.
I think if you're going to survive, you need to be able to be flexible in your style anyway. Really,
adaptability. That's the whole idea of moving forward. Being able to move forward is you have to be adaptable.
Exactly. Or else you're going to have a very painful life if you can't do that. That concludes our show for today. Thank you, wonderful Bhavna, for joining us.
It was great to kind of dig deeper and dive more into the Australians of the year and how they've contributed and what lessons they can teach us.
Absolutely.
It's been great to be able to discuss that today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. I'll see you next time.
Bye.